Bonjour et merci beaucoup d'être là pour cette conversation avec Simon Baker. A-t-on besoin de présenter Simon Baker? Cet acteur australien a commencé sa carrière en Australie, puis il a décidé de venir à Hollywood. Il a tourné avec plein de metteurs en scène différents. Et c'est bien sûr les séries télé qui l'ont rendu populaire dans le monde entier. Mais au milieu de ça, il a toujours trouvé le moyen de faire des pas de côté, de travailler avec des metteurs en scène indépendants, de faire des films dont les sujets étaient importants. Et vous avez pu le voir peut-être hier soir si vous étiez là. Il a présenté ce film Limbo, un film australien magnifique où il joue un personnage différent de d'habitude et qui montre à la fois son éventail d'acteurs et aussi ses ambitions d'acteur. Je vous demande d'accueillir très chaleureusement Monsieur Simon Baker. Simon, bonjour. Thank you. Okay. Are you okay? Yep. You presented last night Limbo. What was it important for you to make that movie, besides the pleasure of playing such a character? But was it important for you to play that movie that criticized the Australian system of justice about the Aboriginal people?
First of all, thank you for coming. It's really an honor to be here and to be able to talk to you all today, and thank you, Jean-Pierre. Yeah, look, I think a big part of doing that film for me, well, there was two big parts of doing that film for me, is obviously we have this, there's a thing in Australia that is a kind of a important subject at the moment in regards to first Australians, Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal people. And that is a notion of truth-telling. Because we're a colonised country, it's very important that there is truth about the atrocities, atrocious acts against Indigenous Australians since colonisation. And the justice system does let Indigenous Australians down constantly, time and time again, even now. And yes, that is an important subject to be putting up onto the screen. I also think, you know, the beauty of cinema and a festival such as this is that it gives you a window to the world of other things that are going on around the world, and I think that's a really powerful aspect of cinema. You know, we do have the entertainment side of cinema, where we have people in capes and tights and prosthetic makeup and Marvel movies, but we also have cinema that is representation of cultures and expanding people's view of different cultures around the world.
Mm-hmm. And you knew the director, Ivan Sen. How would you define him?
Ivan is sort of, I guess, he's like an I think an autodidact. He's an auteur in the sense that he does everything. Yeah. And, you know, some may say he's a control freak, but he is like a painter in the sense that he comes up with the idea, he puts the paint on the brush and the brush on the canvas, and it's completely his work. And somewhere in there I'm either the brush or the paint. But he writes, he directs, he's a cinematographer, he edits, and he does the sound design and the score. So and grades the picture as well. So he sort of does everything, and I think technology's been a very good friend to someone like Ivan.
What did you like the most in your character?
I liked, because it was in black and white, I didn't really have to have makeup. And my hair was so short, so hair and makeup took me about 2 minutes every day, which was great.
Who took the decision to cut your hair? Was it you? Was it an idea of the director?
No, I think we just sort of talked about it.
And the tattoo and...
The tattoos were Ivan. Am I a bit loud?
Yes.
She said no, you said yes.
but
I'm
because I'm near of you.
No, Ivan and I had spent a bit of time. I had a bit of time before I got the script until we started shooting, and we spent a little bit of time together discussing the character and how far forward we wanted to move the character. We made some changes to the script to sort of intensify the kind of the trauma, personal trauma of that character.
And what did you like the most in him?
What's that?
What did you like the most in that character, precisely?
His humanity. You know, I think a part of what I'm drawn to as an actor is expressing humanity, because that's a way that we can connect with each other as individuals and also collectively. So as flawed as that character was, he was flawed because of his humanity. He has this sort of outer shell that is protective, an armor, and the armor was against the damage of such a his vulnerability. So to be able to play through an arc where that is exposed and that sense of fear and doubt was able to penetrate or come out from the inside, out of that armor, through the trauma of this family that they live with and exist with constantly, was fun. And to do it with Ivan, because he's a subtle director. Mm-hmm. So
he said you are a subtle actor.
Yeah, we worked quite well together in that way.
We are going to see a scene of the movie of Limbo.
Okay.
How do you like to work on a character? To work? How do you like to think about him? About your character? Do you read the script many times, or you just the imagination goes?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about the story, and then ways that I can enrich the story through character. Yeah. So, and sometimes that can be running with the story, or running kind of against the story, against the grain of the story, can heighten the story with the character. That's the bigger picture. But as an actor, I think my instincts have always been first as a director. So when I read a script, I visualize the film first, which can be a problem as an actor, because then you get on set and you have a director. You're not it. So I can't, so it's taken me a long time to understand how to turn that off or to relax. I don't turn it off, I just use that to propel me into how I prepare for the character. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any particular, some actors are very studious and they prepare in a very didactic kind of like they do this, and they have their systems. I'm chaotic, mm-hmm. And I get distracted, and I'm sort of organic and free-flowing with the way I work. I trust now, I'm old enough, I've been doing it long enough, I now trust my instincts a lot more than I ever used to. And so a lot of preparation for this character, I was gardening. And I was thinking about the character whilst I was gardening. So often doing tasks. I don't sit down to work. I do practical things I have to do. Wash the dishes, vacuum the floor, paint the house, etc., and think about the character. And trust that all of those things will come together at a certain point when I get there. And then there's always technical elements. There's obviously, you have a script, which is a blueprint that is basically a set of clues, and you have to be somewhat of a detective, and there's facts, and there's sort of summations, ideas, propositions of things that could be in the script. They're all going to manifest and come around in you, and what you do on that screen between action and cut. And a lot of that is trusting that process, that it is going to arrive into the tool, and trusting your tool. And that has taken me, I think, most of my career to get to that point. And I think I'll continue to do it because it's a constant sort of, it's part of the creative process. It's a constant struggle with doubt and fear of failure and all of those things.
Even now?
Yes.
Yes?
Always. Always. But there's a little bit, it just depends. For me, I have anxiety. And I've always been quite an anxious person, and it manifests in nervous energy. So I grew up outside doing energetic things, tiring myself out to relax. So I have this nervous energy. It's just now I'm beginning to care a little bit less. That's where the trust comes in. So it's not like I get a job and I try so hard to make it perfect that I choke all the fun and joy out of it, and I'm stressed and I end up with hemorrhoids. I am more relaxed now, and I trust that my body and my accumulated craft is going to carry me together to a place.
What do you expect from a director?
Trust. Trust mainly, and space. You know, sometimes it's hard. I think it's very hard for a young actor to be allowed the space when you're shooting. Budgets don't really allow for it. You're rushed with time. You're under pressure that way. You put expectations, unrealistic expectations on yourself to be good or to be great. And if you're not a known actor, the director's kind of like, okay, get on with it because we want to spend more money with the star.
The star.
So that's a luxury when you have a director that you feel believes in you and trusts you, and then also allows you a little bit of space. I'm a little bit older now. I now know how to take my space in a respectful way. And also, I want someone to have fun. I want to have fun. Because it's hard work, and if you got to work hard, I want to have a good time.
Little bit flashback. You start your career in Australia, and you came to Hollywood. What was your meaning? Why did you come to Hollywood? Because you can't do otherwise.
Okay, so at the time when I started acting in Australia, I did a couple of commercials and television commercials and things like that, and I was very unsure about. I had this desire within me to become an actor, but I wasn't sure of how to do it, or whether or not I could do it, or the opportunities would be available to me. Where I grew up, and the way I grew up, there was at the time in that community there was like 5 guys to 1 girl. That was the sort of and it was a very kind of cliche, archetypal Australian sort of male stereotype. So we didn't have drama at school. The arts weren't really considered as an option for a career. So I started watching movies with my mother on television. We had 2 television stations, and the cinema was 45 minutes away. And they showed like one movie every 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, and then. So my first memories of watching movies was sitting with my mom watching on a television, reruns of films, and I just loved getting carried away in these stories, and I sort of harbored this little desire deep down to do that, to play characters, and I connected as a boy to characters on the screen, and I found a sense of identity and a sense of understanding about myself through characters in the cinema, and I wanted to do that. I ended up on a TV show in Australia, a soap opera, and I worked on that for about a year and a half. The decision to go to Hollywood was actually, at the time, I had a young child with my wife. We had our daughter Stella, and she had auditioned. She was an actor, and she had auditioned for a film in the States, a big Hollywood film. She had auditioned in Australia, and they'd called her back, and they were very interested, and she got shortlisted on that. So we really went over for her career. We thought, oh, we'll go over and see how that goes. And I went over too, just expecting that, maybe I might get some work or not.
You find one. You were speaking about a young actor. I will show you one. Est-ce qu'on peut voir l'extrait de LA Confidential? Curtis Hanson, 1997. What is your feeling when you see the extract?
Oh boy, oh boy.
Well, I chose it because it's your first apparition in a Hollywood movie, and at the same time, it could be a metaphor of your own status at the time, your own place at the time. Young actor coming in Hollywood, so maybe there is.
That's wild. So young.
What were your dreams at the time?
Oh, look, that was my. I'd worked a bit in Australia. I'd worked in Australia for a few years, but I'd never done a film. So that was my first film, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Danny DeVito and Kevin Spacey, and no, it was fun. I had a great time, and Curtis Hanson was a wonderful director, and Dante Spinotti was the cinematographer. And I remember when that film came out, they had a premiere at the Grauman's Chinese on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was a very star-studded event. And I had kind of guys like Gene Hackman coming up to me saying, "Kid, you were great, man," like after the film, and I thought, oh, this Hollywood thing is it's a walk in the park. I love this. You assume that every movie's going to be met with that kind of warmth and love. There was a lot of learning to do after that. That was good. That was actually the first meeting that I had with a casting woman in Hollywood was with the late great Mally Finn, who cast this film, and a lot of other great American films. And I walked in the door, and she said, "Here, I want you to read this script, and maybe you can come back and meet the director tomorrow afternoon." And I went home. I bought the book on the way home, LA Confidential, the James Ellroy book, and I read the script in the book that night, didn't sleep, and then went and met the director the next day. I was that enthusiastic. If I could just have a bit of that enthusiasm now, my agent would be a lot happier with me.
Did you have any models, any figure of actors that you liked when you were a kid or a young boy or a young man?
Yeah, I think sort of around 1920, not 1920, but 19 or 20. I'm
You are not so old.
I'm not that old. But I moved to Sydney, and that was when there was a couple of smaller art house cinemas in Sydney, and that's when I started watching foreign films, and I fell in love with foreign films, and then I found myself at the Sydney Film Festival, which is a wonderful film festival if you ever get the chance to go down to Sydney. It's on in the winter, and I just sort of fell in love with foreign cinema. I became very fond of Jean-Paul Belmondo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic to watch, so I kind of watched a lot of his films. Young Gérard Depardieu. And I kind of got a little caught up in Truffaut films for a while. And yeah, I liked watching those actors. That, you know, Jean-Paul Belmondo had a how do you say in French? It was like a joie de vivre.
Joie de vivre. Yeah.
Yeah, he had this sort of exuberance to him.
And he's very physical too.
Very physical, and I've always been very physical too. So I related to that.
Mm-hmm. And American actors? Not so much.
Some of them, some of them you
don't have to. Huh?
No, but there were. I'm trying to think. Like obviously, De Niro and those guys were always, great and interesting. I'm also trying to think who else. Christopher Walken I thought was fantastic in a lot of the earlier stuff. Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Kevin Spacey had the
I think
reputation of a theater actor.
I think Kevin was. I did 2 films with Kevin,
yes.
and I thought Kevin was a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
Very compelling actor.
Mm-hmm. And were you impressed at the time by him, or not at all?
Not really.
No. Oh, he's
no, by him, or his acting.
No,
his acting,
both.
his work, I was very impressed with. When you grow up in the country in Australia and you end up in Hollywood and you're sort of like, you can be in a restaurant and a movie star walks in and you shit your pants. You sort of go, oh my God, that's like, this is bizarre. But then when you're actually on a set, you kind of got to pinch yourself and then go, it's all right, just play it cool. We're all just trying to make something here. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're constantly getting sort of, you're awestruck. But then when you're actually working on something, they're no longer on the screen. You're just there to there. You're actually
co-workers.
Yeah, you're collaborating and you're sharing a scene with them.
What do you expect of your partners?
Of my partners, my acting partners.
Acting partner. Yes, it's a cinema lesson.
I don't know where you're going with this, mate.
We can speak about that later, but
sure.
No.
Look, really, I don't. Sometimes everyone's different. Mm-hmm. The one thing I do expect is they're prepared. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'd be surprised how many aren't. And it's a little like, really?
Name.
Yeah, it's name? No names. But no names. But that's all at this point of my career, that's all I've come to expect is that they're prepared. The rest of it is we're all individual and everyone gets to where they get with a performance in their own way. And that is true for me. And I have seen actors that behave in a way that I've maybe, from the outside I look at, I think is not necessarily considerate or possibly a little selfish or obnoxious, but you scratch the surface of that person and it's just insecurity that's making them behave in this way, yeah? And it's almost like the louder and the more posturing they do, the more of a baby they are, yeah? And it's just fear. you know, and as long as it doesn't impact me and anyone else, I'm okay with that. They've got to get to it their own way. And like I was saying before, I've learned how to take my own space for me to find what I have to find for my work. Everyone goes about it in the same way. Some people really want to talk about it. Actors want to talk about stuff ad nauseum until the cows come home, you know, and that's boring to me. I don't really like to overthink it too much because sometimes the energy just drops. So I now know how to move away from those kind of conversations so that I protect myself. But really, all I ever expect from another actor is that they show up and that they're prepared and a willingness, you know, a willingness to work. That's really all it is, because it's how do you say, you probably do, you know this game Jenga? Jenga. You know, you put the things together and you pull the things apart. That's what acting in films is like. So sometimes it's bits by bits. The scene you saw from Limbo with this young boy, he'd never acted before. He's just from that community. He just lived there. So, you know, everyone, I really think acting is quite simple. We make it hard.
In which way?
Well, first of all, we have a call time and there's a structure and a system to the way we have to shoot it. We put a camera on the person acting, which makes them more nervous. And, you know, we go through all these processes. And psychologically, we are the ones that create obstacles for ourselves. But you watch any small child and they are born acting. You know, it's just about intention. It's just about what does this child want? And they will figure out a way to get what they want, not even through their brain. It's just instinct. So, and I think everyone actually has that. Our own conditioning gets in the way of that, and our own we create the obstacles. Our fear, our doubts, all of those things.
I think one of your best qualities is every time you seem very natural and we believe at the second when we see you on the screen, we believe at the character immediately. And I would like to show an extract of Le Diable s'habille en Prada.
I just want to say that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. As an actor, pleasure. That is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
No, but it's true. Really, it's true.
Thank you.
It's true. Well, what was your... what did you think was they offer you the part in Le Diable s'habille en Prada? In the devil...
The Devil Wears Prada.
Yes, sorry for the title in English.
What did I think?
Yes, when you read the script about your character, because we are going to show an extract. I said, what you... Sorry about that.
Okay, quick story. You may or may not know it. It's kind of a boring story, but I'll get it out there anyway because I've got to fill an hour. I was procrastinating about reading the script, you know? I was not that interested in this movie for some reason. I've never really been drawn to a lot of those sort of really Hollywoody type films. And my daughter at the time, she was about 11 or 12, and she said, "Dad, do you have any scripts that I can read?" And I went, "Oh yeah, I've got this one called The Devil Wears Prada." And she was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll read that." And she read it, and she said, "Dad," and I'm not sure if this is going to offend anyone, but she said, "Dad, I think you should do this movie." She said, "The character's a bit of a dick, but I think it's a movie that me and my friends would go and see. And I think you should do it." So I then read it.
No, but what I like in the extract we are going to see is it's a portrait of a seducer, but it is so natural that it is amazing. Oui, on va voir.
Voilà. Et voilà.
On va voir un extrait du Diable s'habille en Prada. And did your daughter like the movie?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if she liked that scene, but yeah, that's the most I've seen of that movie ever.
Have you ever thought that being a very handsome man and very good-looking man could be a burden or could complicate your ambition?
Yeah. I mean, that's a weird question, Jean-Pierre.
It's a French question.
It's so French. Should I answer it in French? No, it's given me, obviously, yeah, look, it's given me opportunities, hasn't it? You know, and, you know, I've exploited those opportunities at times, but my heart creatively has always been in kind of more challenging work. I didn't sort of ever really want to do work that where I was sort of sat back on my looks, so to speak. So I was kind of more interested in doing stuff. You know, I did a play when I was a really young actor, and the director of that play just said to me, it was the first play and only play I've ever done. He said to me, you know, you're a character actor in a leading man's body, and it's always sort of stuck with me. And the truth is, that's kind of what I am. And as much as working in Hollywood was, you know, wonderful, and I was afforded incredible opportunities, and I'm very grateful for that. There is a tendency for actors to become pigeonholed, and you know, The Devil Wears Prada was a very successful film, and then for some time after that, I was sent a lot of films that were derivative of that sort of style of film and that kind of genre, and that's not necessarily, I didn't really want to make a career of that.
Yeah.
So I have often sort of pushed against that within myself. And then, you know, you get to a certain age and, you know, your looks disappear. You kind of become more worn, and you can disappear a little bit more into characters. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think it can be for certain actors an obstacle into something that maybe that they desired or want to stretch a little bit more as actors.
But I think it is also the pleasure of Limbo, because you are a character actor in the movie. Yeah. So I think that was part of your pleasure to do it.
Yeah, it was great. And, you know, even with these sort of more mainstream roles, I always had to try to find a character into it. Because that's you know, I needed somewhere where I could hang my coat for me.
So I'm going to show you another extract that you won't like. I'm sorry, but we can't avoid it.
I like to look forward. This is like kind of like some retrospective torture.
I know, but it's also the part of this conversation. It's to
I know,
to mix both. We can't avoid the Mentalist. We can avoid it.
No.
So
look, let me just be clear. I'm very grateful for the Mentalist.
Of course.
For the opportunities that gave me. You know, I had a great time creating that character, and playing that character was a lot of fun.
I could imagine. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes. So we will see the first scene of the first episode of the first season.
Shit.
You would have preferred the last one of the last...
No, I don't know.
Do you remember the first, the shooting of this scene?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And did you feel at the time that you will live with that character for such a long time?
Yeah, I had a feeling. Sounds arrogant, doesn't it?
No.
It's true, though. I did. Like, I mean, when we were shooting that pilot, you have to understand the character, the way that character developed, it wasn't written like that. I just did what I wanted. This is when I found my space. I took my space with that character, and I was really fortunate because the guy that created it, Bruno Heller, allowed me the space to do that. I would have done it even if he didn't allow me. Still would have done it because it was fun. And I had looked at television series. I mean, this is a procedural television show in America, and I'd looked at the ones that had been successful over the years and the great sort of character ones, like Columbo. I looked at Columbo. I looked at television shows from that era and sort of studied them, and I'd realized that all of those shows, the protagonist, the main character, had their little tics and their little idiosyncratic elements that made them made you want to tune in and watch. So the audiences want that familiarity. They want to see that gesture that they do. Like Columbo used to do just one more thing, right? You know, or whatever it was, just a minute. He used to always do this sort of fake leave thing. You know, the French love Columbo. That's why I'm referencing Columbo.
But like Columbo, you have a French car.
Oh, what? Well, I also strategically, and this might surprise you. I know how rabid the French are with certain characters that they attach themselves to, like Columbo and like Jerry Lewis, and you know you guys go crazy for these characters, and I made a conscious decision. I said, I want this character to be really successful in France.
Why?
I did.
Why especially in France?
Oh, I don't know, because I knew that. I don't know. I'm a bit, at that time, I think I was maybe a bit of a Francophile. You know, I loved French cinema, and I was like, you know, it was anything that, it was foreign and it was exotic, and I knew that might have been some sort of fun in that.
So you succeed.
What's that? So yeah, so I was like, you know, let's dress him more like a European guy, and I think he should be slightly irreverent, and why not give him a Citroen? You know, what do they call that? The Princess or something, isn't it?
DS.
The DS. It's a celebrated French car. Cynical of me, but it worked. Yeah.
And did you participate to the writing of the series, or not at all? And you just
unofficially, I definitely participated. Yeah, unofficially, and I improvised a lot in that show.
Yeah.
So there was kind of an unwritten rule where I just, you know, if there was a circumstance or a situation, because you know what happens when you're working on television like that. There's a writing room. You're doing 24 episodes, 24 hours a year, which is, it's exhausting. So there's a lot going on. The quality of the scripts coming through, you know, once they go through the studio system, the studio and then the television network, CBS and Warner Brothers in this case, once they get through that system, so often they're reduced down to kind of procedural beats and elements. So if I was doing a scene with you, for instance, and you came in and you were doing something in a scene, I might, you know, sort of mimic or mock you in some way as the character that you're being. So there's a lot of spontaneity in it, or you would have a way of saying a line and I would maybe just play around and just to make it fun, you know? There was that sort of irreverence. And then I took the opportunity to start, because it's tedious. I did that for 7 years, and it's fun when you're building the character and it gets momentum, but then when you've got to keep going back and you're exhausted and you've got to keep doing it, you start to feel a little bit like a performing seal. So I had to find ways of stimulating myself, and that was the creative challenge, was to try to find ways of stimulating myself. So I often operated the camera in scenes that I wasn't in, or I would hold the boom. So I learnt different aspects of being on the crew.
Did you direct?
And then I directed episodes.
Yeah.
And then those episodes that I directed, I pretty much hijacked the script and played around with the script, and then started spending a lot of time cutting them. And then often when we had episodes that were less than half decent, you know, there was A-sides. We used to talk about it sometimes as like musicians that would release a record. It'd be an A-side and a B-side, and the B-side was sort of like, meh. The A-side was the hit, you know. And we had a lot of, you'd shoot 24 episodes in a year, 8 days an episode. There's a lot of B-sides, right? So the B-sides, or the problem children, I used to refer to them as, I would go in and try to fix those in the editing room. So whilst I was shooting, I was running back, and the benefit of we were shooting on the Warner Brothers lot, and we had production offices there, we had post-production there, everything was there, so I had a push bike, and I would ride between the set
the editing room.
Yeah. So I used it as a form of film school. But this is just how, like I said earlier, I'm chaotic, and my brain functions in a sort of a kind of a chaotic way. I mean, you probably call it these days, it's ADHD or whatever. It's just how I am. I don't know what it is, but it jumps around all over the place. And instead of trying to sit still and focus on one task and discipline myself in that way, my business that I'm in, and particularly directing, gave me the opportunity to really enjoy the fact that I can jump around onto many different topics and shift. And so I found my happy place with that stuff. What's that?
Did you think your desire to become a director came from your experience on the Mentalist when you direct the
I had a
episode?
desire before then.
Yeah.
I think I was executing the practice of studying different aspects of the craft when I was on the Mentalist, because the hours on set, you know, I worked out once that roughly on the set of the Mentalist, just on average, I think I did just the Mentalist. I did 3 years of a show called The Guardian as well.
Yeah.
That I did something like 45,000 hours just on set on the Mentalist over those 7 years. So I had to find things to stimulate me.
Of course.
And you know, there's not many people that get that's kind of like paid access to making stories with a crew, and that was really a valuable thing for me.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. What was your feeling the last day of the last scene of the last season of The Mentalist? What was your feeling when you shot the last scene of the last season? And
I was emotional.
Did you know at the time that it was the last scene?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the last scene of the last season. Because I was done. You know, I didn't really, you know, I know like a lot of people have always sort of said to me, you should do that again, or this or that. But one thing I've learned about myself is I want fresh experiences, and creatively I need fresh experiences, because you know, it's taken me a long time to sort of muster up the courage to accept this about myself, but I am an artist, and I have to, and I'm curious, and I have to keep learning, and I have to push myself into places that are unknown to me and new, and I need to challenge myself. And that was no longer a challenge. The challenge was not going off the rails, you know, like, because, and you see, you know, you read stories about different actors doing this and that and this and that, going off the rails, because it's it's difficult to sustain over that amount of time, and the pressure is on you. There's 200 people employed because of what you're doing, so you have to keep going for those people. And there was a period of time I never felt it more, that responsibility. That I had an operation when I was on the Mentalist. I had broken my back when I was younger, and didn't know, and I'd kept sort of moving, but I was having a lot of back pain and back trouble, and I had a spinal fusion operation on my spine whilst I was on the show, where they put rods and bolts into my spine and an artificial disc replacement. Sorry, I should have saved you from the gore, but I had 2 weeks off from the show, and there was a lot of debate about whether they would let me do this operation, because they had to shut down production for 2 weeks. But I was having to take painkillers for the pain, and it was very difficult. And I went to the head of Warner Brothers and I said, listen, I don't want to take painkillers. I don't want, because this, and so they gave me 2 weeks off, and the crew for 2 weeks, there's 200 people and they're out of work, and they were all betting that I wouldn't make it back in 2 weeks. They had a book going. They were making bets on whether or not I'd make it back in 2 weeks. And I came back to work 2 weeks later, and it was beautiful. They had a big banner up saying, welcome back to Simon, and I got back to work. But in that moment, I realized the responsibility that I carry on a show like that. And that's a difficult burden. You always have a responsibility, but that in particular.
You were speaking about challenge. The next extract could please you, I hope. I hope.
Mate, it all pleases me.
Because after that you decided to become a director. And you did a movie which is wonderful, which is one of the most beautiful movies about adolescence, and about coming from boyhood to manhood, or between two, or young manhood. I don't know if you say that. And this is a beautiful movie, very moving. It reminds me Stand By Me. I think it's the same kind of atmosphere of the end of innocence. And so we will see a next track, which is visually splendid. What did you like in that story, and why did you decide to make your first movie by this story and to play in it?
I'm a little bit emotional, actually. It was how I grew up.
Yes, and you were surfing yourself.
Yeah, I mean the surfing, yes, of course, but the obstacles of fear and self-doubt and identity.
So,
sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Everything was wrong.
I'm an emotional person, and that's sort of really why I wanted to be a director, because films have made me feel something, and help me understand who I am sometimes, or help me understand what I'm feeling. And I think that film, well, it's based on a book, but the book was so true to the way I grew up. And I remember when I was about 14, 15, and these people existed in my life. A big part of my life was, and a big part of my finding my identity and excuse me, strength was through surfing. and I struggled with fear and just that scene then of the kid, of the boy, Pikelet, his name is, that doesn't paddle out, and that rejection, or that feeling of being an outsider. All of those sort of emotional feelings, you know, I felt at different times as a kid, and I think a lot of people go through that. And particularly in Australia, we had this sort of male archetype, this sort of bravery, and you know, and the obvious version of that story is that he goes out there and he slays the dragon and he's the victor, and that's the hero's journey. But within this story, the bravest thing that he does is he stands on his own 2 feet and says, I don't. Later on in the movie, maybe go watch it, but he says, I don't like it. It's not for me. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of kids when I was growing up that didn't have the courage to say that, and they put themselves into very dangerous, traumatic situations because of that, or they felt a need to have to be macho in some way, or live up to an archetype, an Australian archetype, male archetype. So I was trying to sort of subvert that, but also kind of, in a way, honour my own personal sensitivity. Yeah. But I think, you know, any other subsequent films that I make, they're always going to be laced with the idea of identity and how you're perceived by the world and how you perceive yourself, you know, and sometimes that there can be a real difference between those things. You know, they often say that a lot of the great directors just make the same film over and over again. It's like, I remember hearing that once and I went, yeah, I can understand why, because there's something that drives people to make films, and often it's something that's deep inside them.
But I think only on this scene you can see there is a real director. So why do you wait so much to make the second movie?
Fear and doubt. These things that are the constant challenge of a creative life, you know. And also, you know, life comes at you in different ways and can destabilize you or throw you off or put you into, you know, down a different path. And sometimes you feel more reflective, sometimes you don't feel inspired. And then sometimes you want to, you know, you might see something that you maybe want to change your career. You might just like go, okay, I've done this, and now I want to grow flowers, you know, or I'll always make something. I like making things. I'm a practical person, and I really enjoy that process. And I really like collaborating. I just like the camaraderie of working with someone, you know. Sitting here with you is so much better than me sitting here on my own, you know.
Thank you.
But you get to share that, and I think that's part of being human.
Did you had a lot of? Did you get a lot of pleasure working with the young actors?
I loved it. I loved it. They were great. They were both boys that hadn't acted before. But they could both surf, which was very important. Because I was a surfer and am still a surfer, it was very important to me that there was a deep sense of authenticity to that world, to the surfing aspect of the film and the surfing culture of that period of time.
It is in the 70s, yeah. You said in an interview, speaking about the young actors, that you wanted surfers and not actors, and you said it's easier to learn to act than to surf.
Yes, very, very much. Like I said, I think everyone can. It's just whether or not you can, you know, remove the blockages to allow them or allow yourself to do it.
To plan. Was it obvious that you play in it at the same time? You like to be in front of and behind the camera?
Yeah, it's challenging. At times it's challenging, but it's also like, it's a lot less conversations you have to have because the actor knows what the director's thinking and the director knows what the actor's capable of, maybe. So it's easier and there's an intimacy to it, particularly working with these boys in scenes where I was directing and acting in the same time. So there's an intimacy to that. We were quite a small crew, and I like that. It's nimble and intimate again. Yeah, I don't mind it. It's good. It's all right. Sometimes it's a relief when you don't have to think about the acting as well. So it was nice when I wrapped on that film and I was just directing scenes as a director. But yeah, it's good. It's consuming. It's very consuming. And this was because of the ocean, we were at the mercy of Mother Nature the whole time. I mean, I shot this film in 6 weeks, and so I needed to have the waves, the ocean cooperate, and with the swell, but not just the swell, the wind direction and the tide and so the schedule was a shifting schedule, so it was very challenging, and we were in Western Australia. And some of these places maybe like a kilometre off the coast. So we were quite exposed to the elements and to whatever was in the water at the time. And there was a couple of times where you had to get out of the water. It's challenging.
It's a question a little bit stupid, but if you had to keep only one image or one moment of the whole adventure of Breath, what would it be?
One image from the one frame?
No.
One image?
Or a moment.
Yeah, my son worked on the film with me, my son, and that was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have any project already precise and not only as a director, also as an actor?
Yeah, I have a couple of acting projects. I did a part in a Netflix series, and I think it's going to come out in January next year, called Boy Swallows Universe, which is based on a very successful Australian book by a writer called Trent Dalton. The book is called Boy Swallows Universe, and I play a small but quite important role in that piece. And I had a good time shooting that. I think it's a 6 or 7 part thing that'll be out somewhere around then. And I go back tomorrow to Australia and I start on another limited series thing. It's like a 5-episode thing directed by an Australian director, Justin Cozell. Called Narrow Road to the Deep North, which has a young Australian actor, Jacob Elordi, is in this show. A couple of interesting young actors, a guy called Thomas Weatherall as well, another Australian actor that works on that show called Heartbreak High. And that's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not, the pressure's not on me. The burden of the story doesn't sit on my shoulders, my character's shoulders, so I can have fun.
And he's a very interesting director.
He's a good director, So there's those things, and I'm really, since I finished The Mentalist, I've really shifted a lot.
Of course. My
perspective on my career and where I want to go and the things that I want to do, and I'm being very patient about stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm also someone that I'm only as good as the life that's in me. So I know that about myself, so I have to fill up on life. I can't, there are some people that can just give and give and give and give, and they are like, they're like a conduit for stories, like when Bob Dylan writes songs, he just it just comes out of him, and there's directors that can just make film after film after film after film. It's like I've got to fill up on life, and I've got to feel it within me completely before I go, because it's so immersive, and I am by nature sort of hyper vigilant, so I can't not be switched on the whole time. So I remember when I made Breath, it was like I didn't sleep the whole time we shot that film. Right. You're lucky if you're getting an hour of sort of half sleep every night, because you're just completely immersed in the story and absorbed by the story. Not just story, also the elements of it coming together. Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? That boat that we were on, that little tinny, that boat, we sunk that boat that day when we were shooting. We sunk a big set came in, and the kid had to jump off, and it sunk the boat, and then we had to tow it in and drain it out. I mean, there's all of those things that can constantly go wrong when you're making a film.
Of course, yeah.
They keep you up at night.
And do you have any idea of what could be your second movie? The subject, a novel, or no?
I do. I do, actually.
you want
but
to,
I haven't talked about it. I've been thinking
course.
about it a lot. Well, it's about, it's almost like, this is, we talk about coming of age films, and I think most of us could probably agree that adolescence isn't really the only coming of age that you have. And I think as the world shifts, we are experiencing, human beings experience more coming of age moments, because technology shifts and sort of forces a reckoning on our consciousness and our way of looking at ourselves. So, we are forced to deal with things aspects of how we've known how to live that are now obsolete ways to live, or time has moved on. The fact that, we can walk down the street now and everyone has a camera on the end of their arm, and you go to look at something, and you're wanting to look and feel and see something through your eyes and with your heart, and you're pushed out of the way by someone who's taking a fucking photograph of themselves in front of it. And you're like, this is the world now. And it's gone, and sometimes there's a loss, for people that grew up before we even had cell phones to where we are now. There's certain elements where you go, oh, I see my kids. My kid's a photographer. He's at art school, does photography. He's obsessed with film, and there's this yearning where younger people are wanting to get back into analog stuff there, because they like that time, those moments. And I guess what's happened in that is we are forced to have more and more coming of age moments, where we come of age not in relation to the nuclear family that we've seen in films for forever, but technology ages us very quickly in different ways, and it shifts. So I like the idea of dealing with that, and also the idea of how loss impacts us, right? In the sense of identity. So Breath was a film that was largely about boys becoming men, and those decisions that you make that define who you are, and then you go on into life. I also like the idea of separating out from family, of when you do leave home and make that trek away, and that detachment, that cutting of the cord, of the umbilical cord, in a sense, or loss through that, and how we manage and deal with that, and how that, whether you like it or not, starts to inform who you are as a person more and more. I mean, it's the same film, really. It's just in a different, it's in a different framework, and obviously, it potentially will have a different style. But again, it's always going to be about growth and moving from one period and one phase and one idea of who you are as a person into the next part. And so often that happens somewhat unconsciously. There's so much, those things, we're impacted by things that are hitting us, but we don't see the shift in ourselves so much until you're just behaving differently. You know, and there's those times, and our world these days is so full of stimulation that it's rare that you can actually stop and look at how much you've changed over the last 2 years and what things have happened to you over the last 2 years. You know, even if we just think right now about what we were all going through COVID, through the limitations of the lockdowns of what had to, you know, all of that. It's like none of us want to remember that. So we just move on. But how much have we changed from that period or pre-COVID to post-COVID now? How much have we all changed? It's kind of wild.
Years ago, that will be the last question because time is running. Years ago, the French daily Libération asked the same question to every director of the world. The question is very simple. It's why do you film? If I ask you and say why do you act, and why do you do movies, what would be your answer? So French.
Pardon. I can tell you why I film.
Yeah.
Why I film, and I still take photographs, and I still shoot film, and I like, because all of those things that I just talked about in some rambling diatribe, right, stream of consciousness, when you pick your camera up and you put it to your eye, it frames something, and that framing is a focus, and it puts a focus on there. And then within that, you actually have the focus of the camera, and you decide that we want to focus on this person, or we want to focus deeper. So that it narrows it down, and that when I put a camera to my eye and I see that world like that, it comes alive, you know, and that's exciting to me. Still, every time not so much with my iPhone. But when I put a camera to my eye and I look through a lens, the world is beautiful because it's so full of promise. Why do I act? I act because the freedom that I once possessed as a child comes to life again.
That's a good answer. Thank you very much, Simon. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much. It was really,
Thank you. Thank you.